Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about hard questions. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, "Hi Frederick, thanks for all the content you provide. It has helped me a lot through my web development learning journey. I had my first interview for a junior front-end position 2 days ago and I had a question that surprised me a lot. They asked me if I knew any observability tools and AVS. I know about RxJS and have some familiarity with some of the services AVS provides, but this is all very superficial, so I just said that. The point of my question is, when asking about unreasonable technologies for the candidate to know, just like in the case AVS and observability for a junior front-end React position, what is usually the purpose of it? Trying to pull as much as they can and pick the candidate that just knows more technologies, even if they are not even needed for their position, or perhaps looking to see how do you react when asked for something that you do not know the answer for. This got me thinking and would like to know what you know about this based on your experience." Well, so it's hard to say why an individual does this, but on average there are two main reasons why people might ask these sorts of things. One classic reason is, of course, that you're dealing with an individual who doesn't really understand, or doesn't really have an understanding of what can I expect from a junior level software developer, and sort of what is the range, or what is reasonable to ask of such an individual. I've worked with many seniors and people who are very experienced, who sort of the thing that I like to do when I have interviews with people is that I always start the same. It doesn't matter if it's I don't really care what their CV says, because I've done enough interviewing now to know that a person can claim many years of experience, many more than myself that I myself have on a CV, yet they will not be able to get right questions that are fundamental to be able, in order to be able to do the job. It's that simple. So I never assume that someone's what the role is the thing that you should go by. No, always start the same way, because it doesn't cost you much. And I try to start with the basic questions first and foremost, like the simplest thing in the world, about how if you know what semantic HTML is. Do you understand how a screen reader will behave if, say, for example, you use divs and spans instead of LIs and ULs? Or can you explain to me what a promise is in JavaScript? Can you explain to me what the differences is between TypeScript and JavaScript, etc.? These fundamentals when it comes to doing front-end development in the tech stack that we're using. And the reason why I do that even with the senior profiles is because it will give me a hint: should I go more difficult? Can I increase the complexity? And if it's a really good candidate, then you go into these more advanced topics like observability and how you, because as imagined, it's not that many juniors, especially if it's the first job, who's going to have a strong handle on the more complicated aspects of running a system, because usually at that stage they're mostly just they know sort of whatever they've been taught in their previous job, and they know how to work on stories, but they may not know all of this other stuff. But some people don't do that. They are sort of blinded by what they need, and they are blinded by their own experiences, so they go in and basically ask questions, not necessarily to trip you up, but more because they want to see, it's I like to say, it's they're poking you with the stick. They're trying to, sure, there are these people who try to show off their own knowledge and really go deep and so forth, to prove how smart they are. But usually it's more I want to know if you know this stuff. I want to know if you know how deep is your knowledge on this area. And that's why I stopped doing this, because it makes people uncomfortable when, as I said, if you cannot tell me how a promise, what a promise is and sort of how it works, in this case it's JavaScript, then it's very unlikely that you will be able to tell me more advanced, in-depth topics. If you don't know what like a pure function is, you're not gonna know about monadic structures and composition if we're talking functional. Or it's the same thing, like if you can't tell me what MVC sort of means, then it's very unlikely that you will be able to tell me on the more advanced topics of how a web framework works, or like how to structure a web project, and so forth and so forth. So that's why I sort of lay back. I immediately can determine very quickly if this is a junior level developer, so you don't have to go into that stuff. But as I said, I'm not everybody. A lot of people will do that because they sort of like either they have a script, or because, as I said, they're just sort of forgetting the level. But another thing that is worth thinking about here, as well, as I said, is that stick poking thing, and you touched on it a little bit in your question here. Guys, nobody like can know all. This is sort of I read that a long time ago. There was someone who said that, you know, someone had an argument for in an interview that they didn't know this right now, but they could very easily look it up, and they had said that, yeah, but why didn't you do it before you went to this interview? And I kind of just shake my head at that, and I go, I don't think you fully understand how much potentially an individual has to know about software development to be able to get every question right in an interview. We're talking about, it is the area is so gigantic that it's basically impossible for anybody to get all the questions right. And that's why most sane companies don't try to get you to get everything right. They're poking you, like they have a range of questions, and they want to see if there are any holes in your knowledge, and they want to see, like, do you have a grasp of the things that they care about, which sort of touches on the thing that I think that you're forgetting a little bit here, which is from your perspective, observability and working with AVS might not be super interesting, or like it might not be something you expect from a junior front-end developer, for example. But the problem is that, as I've said before, guys, your job is not what you think it is. Your job is what they ask you to do. It's that simple. And in this specific company, maybe they actually have an AVS setup, and maybe they don't have another, like a team of other people who's gonna do all that shit for you. Or maybe you have to do it. This is something that I have as a daily struggle when I deal with software developers, where, yeah, sure, you know how to work with, like, it depends on, like, your stack, of course, you know your stack, but in this company we have this workflow, we have this infrastructure set up, we have these tools that do, like, telemetrics, or in this case observability, like, we have all of this other stuff around, and the way that the company is organized makes it necessary for you to learn that stuff and to have an understanding of how to do these things. Guys, on my first, like, serious front-end job, I had production access in order to be able to see, you know, I didn't know the first thing about really how to do sys administration for Linux, but I had to figure it out, because that's how they were running those machines. I had help, of course, but I still had to learn it. And so I always tell people when it comes to these questions, like, how hard can you make something and how relevant is it? Well, your job, well, it's really up to you. Like, do you have the right expectation? Because what they need you to know and what you think you need to know might differ in quite a few places. This is especially true for those people out there who say that front-end is just about UI. It's not. There's an entire world of things going on, and I can tell you that, and I've said this many times before, the most objectively correct thing, I will argue, that you can say about what you need to know as in this case, a front-end developer, is that you have to be a full-stack JavaScript developer. You need to know Node, you need to know the ecosystem, you need to know all of these things, because in many cases you don't have, like, a back-end team of people sitting next to you doing all these things for you, and many consider your responsibility to be everything JavaScript. And I work on a daily basis with people like that. They call themselves front-end developers, but they handle the back-end for front-end server, or the static assets, etc., etc., and, like, the deployments and so forth and so forth. And that's part of it, guys. That's you have no idea how many quote-unquote front-end developers who first, it's only when you start working in these companies where you realize that learning how to do JavaScript and UI work, that's just part of it, and it's a very big and important part, but it's not the whole story. So what I want you to take away from this is that usually when people ask quote-unquote unreasonably difficult questions or stuff like that, it's either because they're just trying to poke you to see, like, these are questions that I think are valuable. Does this person know it? And sometimes they get it wrong, and like they go a little bit too tough because they, in many cases, don't put the things they have expectations that are a little bit weird, or like they ask questions that maybe a senior level software developer would know, and they go and do that for juniors and so forth. My recommendations to anybody who's doing an interview with anybody, just start simple. Have it's sort of like a ramping up thing. Have questions that are on the easy scale, and then you have things that are on the more harder, difficult levels, because it doesn't cost you anything to do that, and in many cases you will find that it will actually show you holes in the more senior profiles. Guys, I've worked with people who, like front-end developers, who don't know how to use CSS, and they have management basic, like they're literally like in charge of multiple teams and handling front-end assets and so forth. So there is holes all over the place. So, and the second thing is that usually when you get questions related to things that you feel are outside of your expertise, just be humble about it, as you were saying. Just be honest about it, because it's not about getting everything right, it's about getting enough things right. And in many cases you will find out that the companies themselves, they have a certain setup, a certain work pattern, and you will have to learn that just as anybody. If you talk to anybody who works in support staff or user relationship or anything like that within any company, they will know that even if you need to know, like, I don't know, Salesforce or like one of these ticketing systems or support systems, every company has an entire ecosystem of different services and systems that they need to learn on the job. And so it's very difficult sometimes for you to predict exactly what is reasonable and what is not reasonable for a company to ask of you. All you can really know is that if they're asking about it, usually they're not gonna just do it arbitrarily. They're hopefully, at the very least, and in many cases your role as a developer might require you to learn things that is not strictly within your box in order to be able to work in that place. Have a great day.